for inviting me, and Stan, your persistence. And it did take a little bit longer to kind of track it down, but guess what? God's timing's perfect, right? It's perfect, always. So my story is pretty simple, I think. At age 4, I was living in Naples, Florida, down on the west coast of Florida, and was diagnosed in Naples by an ophthalmologist who basically told my parents that I was going to go completely blind. I don't even know what that diagnosis was. This is just how it's been portrayed to me. Both my parents have passed away. And it's funny, as I get older and I have more questions, it's kind of like, gosh, I wonder, I wonder about certain things. But in any event, I was misdiagnosed, and my parents took me to Boston Palmer Eye Institute in Miami. And I was so glad to see people raise their hand and say that they know J Lawton. That makes me feel not so old, but anyway. At age 4, my parents reached out, and we went over and had an appointment with Dr. Smith. And I remember, because again, I was 4.5 or 5, but it was very profound for me, this experience. And one of the first things that he did, the first thing he did, was prayed, right? He said, do you mind if we pray before we get started? Now, I grew up in a Christian home. We were raised Presbyterian. We went to church on Sundays, but it was not a common, we prayed at Thanksgiving and Christmas, right? So it was not now, again, God puts all kinds of people in your life, and I had people praying for me all through my life. So that stuck with me. And we prayed, went through a series of visual fields tests, and it was a game for me, right, at 5. The penny, I'm just, all of the things, and he'd made it fun. And we finally got through all of the exams and came back in, and he basically told my parents, and again, this is what they portrayed to me later on, and I've shared going forward, is he said, she's got hypoplasia of the optic nerve in both eyes. And he said, her vision should stay the same. You need to trust that if her vision changes, she will be the first to let you know. Okay, because by nature, children want to be safe. And he said, so you trust that if things change, she will tell you. And with that, he looked at him and he said, so you take her home, you treat her just like your other 2 daughters, because I have 2 older sisters. He said, or you will make a cripple out of her, is what he told him. Now and I have to say this, right, back because I'm the attorney, and back in 70, whatever it was, right, crippled was and you know what, I've listened to J Lawton so it's exactly what he would have said, probably today, right, because he was a man of truth, right, I mean, he just loved his character, and just, as I learned more about who he was, quite a colorful individual. So my parents took me home and treated me like my other two sisters. So I 2200 vision in each eye. Rode my bike unassisted to a friend's house, and that was back before the helmets and the bubble wrap that we wrap our kids in today, right, to send them out to play. Fast pitch softball. Just all of the things, marched in the band in high school, all of the things that I was comfortable with doing. And what I didn't realize until I gave birth to my son, right, is how impactful that message was that he shared with my parents early on in my experience. Because I see today in my practice of working with people with disabilities that parents can often be the biggest barrier sometimes, because we do want to protect. And so it brought to my mind, and as I have grown in this area of disability and inclusion, it's not just about getting the employers on board to hire people with disabilities, right? It's also about educators. So last week I was in a classroom full of juniors who are going to be special education teachers. Why? Because they have direct impact. They are planting seeds early. I was just talking to a gentleman who has a child with Down syndrome in 4th, 5th grade, right? Those seeds are planted early in terms of the capabilities and contributions that these individuals can make. And I am here to tell you, they can make a contribution, right? There is value out there. There is a place in America's workforce for everybody, is my belief. Okay? We just have to find out what the skills are and what the accommodation needs are, what kind of assistive technology is out there to make it happen for that individual. It may look a little different, but at the end of the day, we have value and we have the ability to make contributions. And J Lawton Smith set the tone of that for me. I think, you know, as I look back and look at my experience, again, a lot of my confidence that I moved through life with came from that experience, right? The words and the power that, again, educators, but now medical providers, right? Doctors. The power in this room, when you guys get that diagnosis, or you understand that the surgery that you had earlier didn't necessarily fix the problem. It's okay, right? It's okay. God has a purpose. Okay, so, and I know we're about fixing. And sometimes when you can't fix, you feel like, God, I fell, short. That's not true. You said it earlier, right? In my weakness, He is made strong. Okay? And I think about that so often, is that if I had perfect vision, there are so many things in my journey that I would have missed. I would have missed. Even being a mom, stepping out, and I never doubted for a second that I wouldn't be a good mom. I mean, can my kid see better than I can? Yes, he can, and he's my seeing eye son. Thank God for that, right? Thank God. Well, I say that. Now, the kid still takes Uber, okay? He's 16, and I am single again. So potentially he could be the only driver in the house. However, he thinks Uber's a great idea. And I said, of course you do, honey, because it's attached to my credit card. So one of us in this house needs to drive, and it's not going to be me, okay? So yes, there are pluses to having a 16-year-old in the house. But I share that because I remember when he was born, right? And I was in the hospital, and there's all kinds of things that, you're concerned about as you're a new mom. And I remember the nurse coming in, and it was just she and I in the room. And my son was in the little, whatever you call it, cradle or whatever it was. And he had one of those, which is not uncommon, right? But where he had taken in a lot of fluid or something right before he decided to arrive. And so he was coughing a lot. And occasionally he would choke a little bit. And so I'm standing there, and she's talking to me, and the baby is over to the side, but I hear him start to kind of cough, and I just excused myself and went over and picked him up and turned him over and patted him. And I thought she was going to drop to the floor, right? Because she looked at me and she said, "You're going to be just fine. You're going to be fine." So it's that confirmation, again, that God has given me, right? He's been there all along. And I will say this, one of the things that I remember about before I went to Boston Palmer Eye Institute, and I think about this often, we had a gal named Maria that came and did some work in the house for us. And she was cleaning the day that we got ready to leave. And I remember it being very dark in the house. And she looked at me and she said, she knew where we were headed, and she said, "Have you prayed?" And I said, and I remember looking at her and thinking, "Prayed?" And she said, "Yeah." She said, "Have you prayed to ask Jesus to heal your eyes?" And I said, no. And she said, well, go find a quiet place. And she said, go pray. And so in the obedience, right, of a child, I went, and I remember standing in the bathroom, and I just prayed a simple prayer. And I go to Boston Palmer Eye Institute, and who's there but Dr. J Lawton Smith, right? Now, again, from that time on, in my mind as a child, I have always had faith that God was there, regardless. I remember riding my bike and just, simple prayer, Lord, just watch over me. Just keep me safe and keep everybody else safe, right, as they dive out of the sidewalk, out of my way. But that is the kind of faith that I've had from the beginning. And I know that that has so much to do with the experience that I had with Dr. J Lawton Smith. Fast forward, I did decide to go to law school. I argued with God the entire time. I applied to one school for obvious reasons, right? I'm legally blind, a lot of reading in law school, and just was scared. I was just like, Lord, I don't know if I can do it. But as as you read earlier, I graduated from college, 4-year degree in foreign language, in Spanish. I'm going to change the world. I walk into and I'm just going to use it, but they're a great company, the Ritz-Carlton, right, down in Naples, because it was within bike riding distance of where my dad lived. And I could get myself there, sit down and interview for a pool bar server outside. I mean, who can't serve a chicken sandwich and a little drink or something? Sat down, interviewed, looking like I do, right? You wouldn't know if I told you, unless I told you, right, that I have a disability. So this was 1989, so it was prior to the ADA, the passage of the ADA. And disclosed that I had the disability. And the guy smiles and says, okay. And so I go home and I don't get a call back, and I don't get a call back. And I thought, are you kidding me? I mean, really? I've got a 4-year degree and I can't get a job as a pool bar server? Something's wrong, right? So I had a friend, my dad's, who said, hey, let me call and see what I can do. And I'm thinking, I got this. I'm good. So I sat there for 2 days and didn't get a call back and said, okay, see what you can find out. And they did. She called and they were concerned that I was going to fall in the pool, or I was, going to walk into the pool or something. And again, I can understand that, right? Because you're not sure, and we see that today. I mean, there's uncertainty as to what can somebody really do, and what if, and a lot of the what ifs keep us from stepping forward and saying, you know what? Again, the concerns are not necessarily based on reality, right? So I did get the job, but it also planted the seed and confirmed for me that my next step was to go to law school, because I thought, if I can walk into an interview looking like I do, just by telling somebody that I have a disability, the door closes, that's not okay. So I did, applied to the school and got accepted, and literally argued with God the entire, from the mailbox back to the house. I was like, are you sure? I mean, are you sure about this? So went to law school. While I was there, received services from vocational rehabilitation in Florida, but in Alabama as well. And in the course of that, came across Dr. Tom McKinnon. And I don't know if anybody knows Tom McKinnon out of Birmingham, Alabama. But he was one of the doctors that saw me in Birmingham. And I'll never forget, he came in, and when he looked at my file and saw the history and saw J Lawton Smith's name, he's like, I'm not going to argue with that, right? And he had actually, I think, had him as a professor at one time. And he came back in and he handed me a phone number. And he said he's not practicing anymore, but he is still in South Miami, Florida. He said if you ever wanted to call him, there's his number. And I thought, well, that's kind of neat. That's an idea. And I stuck it in my wallet, and on I went. And it was several years later. I pulled that number out. I think it was after my mom had passed away. And it was several years later. And I just pulled out that number, and I said, you know what, I'm going to call him. And I did. I sat down at my desk. I was working for Wachovia Bank at the time in Birmingham. and sat down and called him, and he answered the phone, and don't you know, because if you know him, you'll know, he was preparing for a men's Bible study, and he shared that with me. And I just said, Dr. Smith, you're not going to remember me. I said, but I just needed to talk to you, call you and let you know, and just to say thank you. Because you have had such an impact on my life that you'll never realize. But shared with him that I'm a mom. At the time I was married, and so I said, and I'm an attorney. I said, and all of those things came, I believe, much out of the message that you gave my parents early on, which was you take her home and you treat her just like your other two daughters, or you'll make a cripple out of her. And I said, and they did that, and they listened. And I said, because I never felt like I couldn't do something. Now, did I get in over my head a couple of times? I did, and that's okay. But you know what? That was my decision, right? That was my decision. Like the time I got a job at a Mexican restaurant and carrying fajitas sizzling across. Not a good idea for a blind girl. I'm just telling you, not a good idea. And I don't know about you guys, and I love Mexican food, but it all looks the same on the plate. So if you got a chimichanga or an enchilada, I don't know, it's a little chaotic at my tables. So I just, and it's okay, right? It's okay. It was, not a good thing. And I will share this little tidbit too, right? While I worked at the Ritz-Carlton at the pool bar, for those that are Rolling Stones fans, they were on property for 2.5 weeks. This skanky dude comes walking up off the beach. Skanky. He was skanky, okay? We were supposed to have our eyes open for people coming up and trying to get pictures and everything. So we were setting up early, and I told the bartender, I said, I don't know who this guy was. I don't think he belongs here. Yeah, it was Keith Richards. I didn't know. I wasn't a big fan at the time, and they played at the Orange Bowl not too long ago, and I walked by the TV, I told my son, that's him right there. He's still playing. I think he's on a walker now, but he's still playing. So, there are times, right, that you get in over your head, but that's where his grace comes in, right? I mean, honestly, I have to keep my sense of humor. You have to, because it's part of who I am. It's part of who I am. But the joys that I have had in my weakness, right? In Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. And I took that scripture in when I took the bar exam. The things that I have learned in this journey far outweigh anything that I would be or could do without the vision that I have today. And I look at my son, I look at the times that not being able to drive has purposefully slowed me down, so that if we have to go somewhere, we walk a lot of times. So that drives where I live. So I live in this community where we've got restaurants and shops and things that we can walk to because I can't drive. And it allows you then to slow down. And I remember when he was little, picking up a rock and just, or being amazed by, some flower or something. Those are the things that if I was, putting him in a car seat, we were off to the grocery store and back, I would never have had the opportunity to pour into my son. Now, at 16, he's ready for mom to stop pouring into, I'm done, Mom, I'm exhausted. But it's those little things, right? The sunsets. I mean, stopping. I remember walking out of Walgreens one time and looking, and just an amazing sunset. The colors. And just stopping and going, buddy, look at that. That is a gift. And there are going to be days, and I know we've all had them, where you're exhausted and you feel like nothing's gone right, and everything has fallen in, but you can look out, and I said, you can see that sunset, and you go, you know what? That's a gift, and it's a good day, and tomorrow's going to be another day, right? The sun's going to come up, and that's the joy and the hope that we have to hold on to, because it gets hard. This is hard. What you guys do every day is intensely difficult, right? So. No, I just, again, the fact that I have been able to come and spend time with you all is a true blessing for me, because I just, how you have in your gut sometimes, like there's more. right? There's more that I'm supposed to do with this message. Maybe this is it. You know, maybe this is it. But I will leave you with this, and Lord help me when I say this. But in the event that there is anything, honestly, that I can do for you guys in terms of just that message, man, doctors need to hear this, right? You guys need to know that there is hope, and that the power that you have in your words at the point of diagnosis is so, so important. So just, again, be prayed up, right? Stay yielded to what he wants to do, because I promise you, I am a testimony to the power of what he can do through you, every one of you. So thank you for the time, and enjoy the rest of your conference.